Yo, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Man to Man podcast live. Man, we are so grateful to be here. It's been a couple weeks, but we are back. We're live in this place today. And y'all, I'm pretty excited about it. I think last time we met live, was that when you were here?
That was
Was
when
that
I
when
was
you were
there.
here? All
I
right,
was in the
you
SIP.
live here. We was in the stew. We
Yeah.
were back here, man, having a good time, man, enjoying that, man. You gonna be here another time, right? Next month?
Yeah, end of
Sometime?
June, actually June 30th or something like that. Before that, a couple days before that. Yeah.
So we'll see, man, how we can do another
Yep.
recording or something like that. If you ain't too busy, I know you come in like a celebrity, man,
Hey, when
touring
I
all
come
these
in,
churches and stuff like
I gotta see my boy. So that's automatic. We're gonna make it
that,
happen.
man. We'll make it happen, man. Again, thank y'all for tuning in to this episode of the Man to Man podcast. If you're watching this on the replay, man, we had a lot of great stuff coming out. We were going through some of the videos and some of the lives that we've been doing. We got a lot, man. We kind of got us a little library, or
Hey,
library, as some people may say, of live streams. And if you
yeah,
have not been paying attention on YouTube, on Instagram, TikTok, even Men to Men, and my personal page on TikTok, we've been putting out a lot of shorts, a lot of
yeah,
stuff, trying to be more consistent with that. And so, if you like short form content, that is kind of what it's what we've been knocking out for the last
yeah.
couple of weeks. We've been focusing more on that. And so you can find that on YouTube Shorts. You can find it on TikTok. On TikTok, it's James Howard Jr. On Instagram, and then on YouTube. I think on Facebook, it's all Men to Men, Men to Men. And so make sure you follow it on all the platforms so you can get that, man. It's just little snippets from what we do here, and we got some other stuff coming up in the future that we're pretty excited about as well. And so today, man, we are going to be starting a new series. I forgot my prop. I had borrowed the book, and I worked hard
That's
to get a
hilarious.
physical copy of the 5 love languages, man. And my wife called me while I was on my way to the studio. She said, "You left your book on the desk." And
Yeah,
I said, "Well, forget it." That's just the kind of morning it's been. And
yeah.
so you can pretend like the book's here. I don't have it where I can pull it up, man. And they're like Gary, what's his last name? I can't remember his last name.
Chapman,
Chapman.
Chapman.
I
Yep,
was gonna say it, but I
you had
wasn't
it.
confident.
It was
Gary
there.
Chapman, man.
Yeah,
The 5 love languages, talking about relationships and how we communicate as husband, as wives. They even have other versions for like singles, man. Like a best-selling author, man. Millions and millions of copies of this book sold. And man, I think this book is probably one of the most foundational things you can get for your marriage, other than the Bible.
other than the Bible, the
Other than the
biblioteca.
Bible, man,
Yeah,
there is the 5 love languages is a book that you need to read,
yeah.
preferably before you get married, because it's a lot of things, man. This communication is
Man,
one of the biggest things in marriage, man. And it
man.
talks about how you communicate and how you talk and the way you receive things and stuff like that, man.
Yeah,
It's just amazing. It's just a
yeah,
great book. My wife and I, we went through it. We were trying to remember, man. We were talking like, did we go through it with marital
yeah.
counseling, or did we do it on our own? We can't remember. I can't remember details like that. And so she could remember, I could remember either. And so this is I'm trying to pull it up right here on this website right here, just so y'all can have an idea of what the book looks like. So I'm gonna try to share my screen. Uh Share screen.
Share
There.
that screen.
Yeah, I gotta sing. I gotta sing when I do it. Share
Come on,
screen. Then I'm gonna click right here.
come on.
Right here. There we go. 5 love languages. This is kind of
For
what the book looks like.
9.99.
9.99. Are you out of your mind? There it is right here. That's kind of what the general look of what the book looks like. Like I said, there's been multiple editions over the years of what it is, but just look for Gary Chapman, man, and the principles are in there. I'm telling y'all, they are golden.
Solid,
So
solid.
today, what we're gonna do is we're going to be starting a series where we look at the 5 love languages, right? Look at the 5 things that you can incorporate into your marriage, you can incorporate into your relationship. That's going to help you to understand, since this is the Man to Man podcast, help you to understand your wife better, and even help you to understand yourself better. And
Yeah.
so some of the there are 5 different love languages that we're going to touch on. And so let me see. I should have had them pulled up. Do you have them memorized, bro? You got them memorized.
Nah, I know. I know mine.
Right, right, right.
Physical touch.
The physical touch, man, for sure.
Words of affirmation. Yeah.
We got the first one,
I
which
mean,
is
I guess
words of affirmation. Uh, the next love language is quality time.
quality
Uh,
time.
number 3 is receiving gifts. Acts of service is number 4, and then physical touch
Physical.
is
Hey,
is the last one, man. And
yeah.
so we're gonna go through all of these, and of course we're just gonna kind of go through them all. We're gonna start from the first one, and we're gonna be looking at words of affirmation today. And so, Raph, man, let's kind of dive into this, man. What is the general idea of words of affirmation, and why that is important, and why are we talking about that today?
Yeah, I think the best way to explain it is kind of how he frames it at the end of that chapter on words of affirmation. He says the deepest human need is the need to feel appreciated. Words of affirmation can meet that need in many individuals. And so, obviously, saying kind words, saying encouraging words, saying words that build up, um, all of those things kind of find themselves in this aspect of communicating affirmation for another person that is huge. I love how he starts off giving a quote with Mark Twain where he says, I can live for 2 months on a good compliment.
Oh yeah,
And if you get just 6 of those out of the year, it'll fill your emotional tank,
yeah,
supposedly, if you can live off of two compliments.
right, right,
Or 2 months off of a good compliment. But I do think that that is huge. And I think that people want to feel as if they are valuable and what they do brings value, and that they're appreciated for what they do. It gives them meaning and purpose. And so, you see it as something vital. And before I even get more into it, I know we were joking around. Well, we were serious about like, hey, this needs to be something that you have before you get married. I would say before you get married, before you're even thinking about a dating relationship or a courting relationship, like you're serious about who you date is who you'll marry.
right.
When you get in a courtship, when you get married, and after. Because I mean, some of these things, even in this first chapter and before, I'm looking and I'm adjusting even now and saying, oh, I need to do this today with my
Right,
wife. And we've been
right.
married 9 years. And so
Yeah.
you never find yourself not needing or not adding or not benefiting from some of these things that he talks about in the book. But specifically, hey, words of affirmation is huge. So before he gets into, some of the different aspects of words of affirmation, he gives kind of like this general thought. And so he uses one of Solomon's words, and I can't remember if it was in Song of Solomon or somewhere else in the Bible, but he talks about how an anxious heart weighs down a man, but a kind word cheers him up. And,
Mhm.
and when I think about that, the first thought that came to mind, right? We men to men, let's just go straight in. Let's just talk about it.
Right.
For some men that might be watching this that may be married, right? And they're on the verge of that word that you don't want to bring up, but that's a real word, especially within the Christian culture. I think within Christianity, Christians have the highest divorce rate than
Mhm.
any other group of people. But that word comes up because there's this reality of, hey, I am not lifting up this other spouse.
Right.
There's things that I'm not affirming. And when I hear that passage, right, and how a kind word cheers him up, maybe the reason why your marriage is dead today is
Mhm.
because you have been absent and void and not lifted up your spouse and affirmed them in ways that would actually bring life to your marriage.
Mm.
Like instead of you talking about all the things that she's not doing and you
Right.
spending your focus and your attention there, maybe you need to focus and be more intentional on the things that you do see,
Mhm.
even if it's one or two things. What
Right.
would it look like in our marriages if we spent more time talking about the good things than the bad things? How
Right.
would that change and shift how we feel about our spouse if we decided to use the word that Gary uses all the time, suspending negative words? If we decided to say, hey, I'm going to suspend a time of just dogging my spouse and now decide to instead instead of saying these bad things, I'm going to say these good things about these kind things,
Right.
these positive things, these things that encourage, which I don't want to get too deep in it, but I love the breakdown. To encourage means to inspire courage. What would it look like if I decide to inspire courage into
Yeah.
my spouse instead of talking about all of the things that he's not doing or she's not doing?
Right.
But I mean, that's just a good place to start right there, bro. What do you think about all that?
Yeah, man, and I think that's good too, man, because a part of the book, and like I said, y'all need to read like the whole book. There's like 2 or 3 chapters before they even get to the love of language, just breaking stuff down. But one thing that I thought was important in the book, is when he told the story about the woman who comes to his office, and she was like, "Man, I've been asking my husband for 6 months now to paint the bedroom or paint the whatever room in the house, right?" And she was talking to him because he's a counselor or whatnot. If you don't know who he is, but she's talking to him. She's trying to help him understand, hey, it's important for you to clean this up. I need you to clean this up, and I need you to paint this room. And she said for months she had been saying over and over again, "You need to do this. You need to do this. You need to do this." And Gary, he said he asked her. He was like, "Hey, what are the good things that he does? Right? Do
Mm,
you believe that he knows that you want the bedroom painted?" She was like, "Of course. I've been talking about it for 6 months." And he said, "Man, let's try something. Instead of you telling him all that he can't or he hasn't done, or telling him, 'Hey, it was a great day today. It was beautiful outside today. You could have painted the bedroom if we didn't have anything to do.' Instead of saying stuff like that, start affirming the
yeah,
things that he already is doing." So he
yeah,
starts asking specific questions like, "Does he pay the bills on time?" She was like, "Yeah." "Does he make money and bring it home?" "Yeah." "Does he do this? Does he do that?" She's like, "Yeah." "Does he help his kids with whatever?" She was like, "Yeah, he does all that stuff." And he told her, "Hey, why don't you start telling him how good of a job he's doing at doing just the basic things that he does as the husband and as the man of the house, right?"
yeah,
And
yeah,
so she's like, "Okay, cool, we'll try it or whatever." And she does. She just tells him, affirms the different things that he does. "Man, I really appreciate you taking care of bills, because there's some men out there that don't even pay the water bill. There's some men out there that don't do this. I appreciate you. I appreciate you." And guess what? You better believe that room got painted, bro.
come on,
That room got painted. He talks about that, man. And it's like this, it's not that it was this manipulative, "Hey, I'm gonna try to play this mind trick on you," but the fact that this man felt like, "Yo, I'm the man of this house. I feel appreciated. You know what? Maybe I should do this thing that she has been asking me to do for the last 6 months. Since
yeah,
she showed an appreciation to me, I'm going to show my appreciation by accomplishing something that she has requested, not that she demanded." And we could talk about that later on. I read something about that last night, and later on in the chapter, talk about the
yeah.
difference between requesting something of your wife or your husband and demanding something. That's just like, I'm jumping ahead, man. But the
That's good.
idea of affirming somebody, um, and pointing out the things that are good, like like you said, Rap, even if it's only 1 or 2 things,
Yeah,
you just look for them. Better find them, right?
yeah, yeah.
If they can fold clothes good, yeah. If they can cook a good bologna sandwich, you
Hey.
better you better you better praise that. You better praise them for that. So yeah,
Oh man. Hey, man, I think that's good. So as you were talking, one of the things that came out was like, not that we're doing this in a manipulative way, like
right.
we're not trying, but I think that kind of is the thing that you have to navigate as you do that, as you begin to really focus in on, hey, I am going to speak well and really focus in on that. Because I think the issue is always going to be for us, the barrier is always going to be our selfishness, what we want.
Mm-hmm.
So we
Right.
want something specific from our spouse. And you may be watching this and thinking, oh, all I have to do is just start saying all the good things. And then the automatic result is going to be that they do it. But I think that's one story. But the reality is, more than likely, it won't happen that easily.
Right.
Right. It'll come with some tension and some time. And I
Right.
think that if we go in knowing that we're not just doing this to get something out of our spouse, but
Right.
we're doing this because we love our spouse. And so, hey, I really just want to focus in here, even if you don't change, because I love you. And hopefully that is the thing that's beginning to turn the tide or to change the tide in some ways in your relationship. Because if not, you'll always keep coming back to, well, I did this, but it didn't work out, so it can't
Right.
be good. And it's
Right.
like, no, that
Right.
is not, you're not doing this because this is good. You're not doing this necessarily because you want your spouse to change. You're
Mm,
doing this really ultimately because you need to change,
mm,
and you need to see that you're so focused on what you want from your spouse that you cannot see what your spouse is actually doing,
mm,
and you can't see how you're not showing up. So at the
yeah.
end of the day, this is really something for you to help you. And that was a thought. We talked about this yesterday. I was watching this guy talk about marriage, and he was like, the reason why divorce is so high is because people don't want to work on themselves. They want to fix their spouse. They want their spouse to be perfect, and they don't realize that ultimately they aren't perfect either. And the
Right.
place that they need to come to is fixing them. That's the thing
Right.
that they actually have control
Mhm.
over. And how many people, the reason why they're talking about divorce is because they're frustrated because their spouse hadn't changed, all the while still being the same person that they were when
Mhm.
they first got married. And what would it look like if we began to be more charitable and gracious and begin to speak words of affirmation to our spouses? I think our feelings toward our spouse would change. And then
Yeah.
what would it look like if we began? I got a mirror next to me. Y'all can't see it. If we would just really start taking a good look at ourselves. That's the we always bring it back to the gospel.
Right.
The beauty of the gospel
You
is
can see the
that
mirror a little bit right there.
hey, there it is. There it is. Right there. You can see my background. Um, the beauty of the gospel is that even in our brokenness, God still pursues us. And that's the
Yeah.
mirror of marriage, too. I think that we have to learn that we aren't marrying, we're not getting married to the perfect version of the person that we're getting. Like, no, like you are marrying a person that is going to have to grow, going to
Right.
have to learn, going to have to work through his own stuff if the marriage is going to continue. So
Mm,
when you get married, you don't marry this perfect version. You marry a version that for lifelong until death
right.
do us part will always be gradually, hopefully, getting better or needing work. And so,
Right.
because that's true, it should allow us to be more charitable and to even realize in our own life, like there are things that we need to grow in, things that we need to learn, things that we don't have. And I think the unfortunate reality is our value systems when we
Hmm.
come into marriage are different. You
Yeah.
value this, and this other person values that. Like you want the house clean, and you say that this is so important that I can't live with this person if he doesn't see this value. And then the other person's spouse is saying, hey, what I bring to the table, providing for the family is so important. And I need you to appreciate and see
Right.
this. And it's like, I don't see it, so I'm not going to talk about it. I don't see it, so I'm not going to appreciate you. And that inner conflict, that inner exchange is what causes a lot of problems in marriage, bro. And so
Yeah.
even as we just talk about the intro before we even get into some of the specifics, it's like these are the things that we have to work on if we really want to be men that honor God in every aspect of life. Like
Yeah.
we got to do some self-reflection. We got to do some self-work. And it can only come by help of the Holy Spirit.
Right.
Because you being a man that is charitable, that's not normal, especially if you're not
Mhm.
getting something from your spouse that you think you deserve.
Right.
God is going to have to help you to do that.
Right. Yeah, man. Couple of comments, man. We got coming in, man. My pops. If y'all haven't seen, he's been on the podcast before. He says I've been
Solid.
married for 38 years, and my wife lifts me up so much by telling me that she really loved the outside rail I built. My father said he builds stuff all the time, and he
Wow.
realized affirmation is so much more than money. So that's obviously his love language, man. To get told,
Cash in.
we'll get into it later on in this chapter, and later on even in this series that we're doing, that these 5 love languages, we need to understand that these aren't like copy and paste, right? You're going to
Yeah.
go through these 5, and the idea is to figure out with your spouse, with your wife, which ones work best for you, which one works best for her. And
Yeah.
we encourage you, man. The book walks you through this, and I think there's even a section in the book, I haven't read all the way through it in a long time, but we will as we're going through this series, where you actually take a test and you try to figure out what your love language is so that your spouse can best love and serve you in that way. And so, man, let's dive into this chapter. We haven't even got into the chapter for real, right? This is just the
Yeah.
first like 2 pages. So
Yeah.
y'all go ahead and read this stuff, man. There are a couple of the way that the words of affirmation works is that they broke it down into what I think 4 or 5 different areas. I think I may be missing some of the areas in my notes, but when we talk about words of affirmation, the first thing we talk about is encouraging words, talk about kind words, we talk about humble words, and then I think we talk about different dialects of that type of language and how you say certain things to your wife.
Right.
And so right now I want to dive into encouraging words. So we talk about affirmation. Encouraging words seems to be like a natural thing. The story that he tells is that there was a woman who was a writer in school, and she found out her last semester of college that she was a great writer, but she had done her career, she had done her whole degree in like business or something like that. And so she starts to write certain things just on the side. And it's good stuff, but she didn't have the courage to actually
Yeah.
go and publish it, because she published one thing and it was shot down or whatever. And her husband, knowing that she was a great writer, just decided one day, man, I'm just gonna read one of my wife's articles, one of my
Yeah.
wife's articles. He does, and he comes to her and he's like, babe, this is good. Like, this is amazing. Like, you need to you need to publish this stuff, right?
Right.
And so she was like, you really think it's that good? And so working through her fear, working through all of that, she was able to push forward and to publish multiple articles, and even now has a book contract,
Straight.
because of the encouragement from what her husband pushed in her. And the idea behind this is that, man, there are a lot of things that are dormant, I believe, in us. A lot of gifts, a lot of dreams, a lot of hopes, a lot of businesses, a lot of books, a lot of podcasts, a lot of different things that God has kind of put in us that kind of stay dead because it doesn't get watered by the encouraging words from our spouse, right?
Wow.
Because I think like the simple fact that we're doing this right now, this podcast. I've tried podcasts and stuff over and over again and have stopped them and quit them, and I mean, started them and quit them and stuff like that.
Same.
But I think
Same.
one thing for me is just like my wife is always encouraging me, like, go ahead, go try it. I really would like for this online ministry to grow into something that is not just for me, but can help men all over the world. And my wife is like behind me, like, you go, boy,
Yeah.
you get it, you go. And in them weeks where I don't feel like going live, where I'd be like, bruh, like, I don't really know if I want to do this anymore. Like,
Yeah.
the encouraging words that she fed into me a while back ago, it's just like, hey, I can do this, I can try that. And it's not just with this podcast, but so many things in my life, man, where the
Yeah.
encouraging words specifically from my wife has pushed me to accomplish things like finishing my master's, stuff that I ain't necessarily
Come
want to
on.
do, stuff that
Come on, Mo.
I had to do, trying to lose weight, all this kind of stuff. All this kind of stuff is just encouraging things that when I sit back and think about it, it's like, man, my wife is behind all of this, right? The
Come on.
the encouragement and the hope that I feel in these certain areas of my life comes from the words that she said.
Yeah.
What about you, man? Have you felt this type of thing in your life, encouraging words specifically from your spouse, from your wife?
Yeah. I mean, what's funny is I think my wife has actually suspended things that she wanted to do, in order for me to be able to do the thing that I felt the Lord was leading me in. So church planning is a great example of that, where when we moved, she was kind of doing something with her career, but she had dreams and aspirations. And when we first moved, it was kind of like, hey, I'm gonna put these on hold. And she was at the house, for 2 or 3 years as we were trying to adjust to being in a new city. She just started a new job this past year. And it's just like she's finding so much life to that. And I'm looking at it and saying, wow, like my wife's got a lot to offer. But because she was able to allow us to transition, and the words and the other things that she did that were encouraging to us being where we are today, it was the thing that kept us in it. I mean, especially during the pandemic. So we had moved right before the pandemic hit. I mean, right before, just a couple of months before it had hit. And there were moments kind of where I was kind of like you with the podcast some days where it's like, I don't want to do this. It's like, why are we here? Why did we make this huge sacrifice? Man, I took my wife from her whole family to move to Houston, and she's the one that's encouraging. Even as we both kind of try to figure out what's going on, it was that encouragement that really kept us. But I also think, man, like the other thing that came to mind as you were talking is that encouragement just can't come from like nothing. It doesn't come out of it comes from
Right.
actually doing the work of, looking into your spouse. Like the story that you gave, the brother actually had to read an article to
Right.
be able to really lift his wife up and to inspire her. And
Hmm.
like we have to be willing to do the work, because it's not just going to happen. We're not just going to look at our spouse and be able to spew out a bunch of, especially if we just been looking at the negative aspects.
Right.
So, doing the work of learning our spouses, learning the things that they love and that they do well, or
Right.
even like maybe they don't do it well today, but the book talks about the potential of the spouse
Right.
and speaking into maybe not where they're strong, but where the potential could be,
Right.
speaking to that person and
Mhm.
inspiring them to rise up and be that person. I think requires work on your end. And I think that it's not only a blessing to the spouse for you to do that, like this is not just for them, this is for you. It's a blessing to you when you begin to lift up your spouse, affirm them in these ways, because I think that there's something happening for both of you that's good for both of you.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes we just think, oh, this is just for one person. It's just a one
Mhm.
way thing. And it's like, nah, this is actually beneficial for you too as well. So do the work, man. Do the work.
Do it. Do it, man. So look, my mom says right here, she says support from your other half is so important. It is awesome sauce, right?
Awesome sauce. Come
Yeah,
on.
man. It is the awesome sauce. It is the secret sauce, man, that I think can push. I mean, because when you think about it, you think about like the super couples, right? When you think about the people who have done great things together as husband and wife, I believe a lot of those things are successful because they are sitting there encouraging each other. I just think about like my mom and my dad, man. My mom, she put so much on hold when I was born, and then three more kids after that. And she went back
Wow.
and got her degree. And now she went and got her realtor license, and like she's doing a lot of things now, man, that she had to put on hold for her family. And God is just showing her like, hey, like she's getting like awards for being
Wow.
like, in this career doing great things, man.
Wow.
In the seasons where she was encouraging my dad and was pouring into him, like you can see it now where he's just reciprocating that back to her, and she's just trying all these different things and killing it, man. And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just cool to see that like for me personally in my life, man, to see that back and forth.
Yeah.
They don't talk about it. They don't say, hey man, I encouraged your mom today to do this and that or whatever, but you can just see it. You can see
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
joy that comes from them encouraging each other. And it's just important, man. And here's the thing I was gonna say earlier, man. I think when it comes to encouraging words, I think another thing we have to be careful about is faking it, because your spouse can see straight through that, man.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
they
Facts.
they
Facts.
know, like you said, if you've been negative and negative and negative so much, and then you're just trying to fake something, right?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think it's a delicate balance, right? Because if you want to come from being a discouraging person and then want to try to be an encouraging person, I think there's
Yeah.
going to be a season of that where it's kind of
Right.
they're going to kind of be like,
100%.
I
100%.
am. But if
Yeah.
you're continuing to um continue to encourage them, like genuinely encourage them, and say certain things that are specific about the things that they are doing well.
Yeah.
I think eventually you'll get to the point where it's just like, yeah, okay, cool, this is really going to be effective. But there may be a season, man, for the
Yeah.
marriages out there that may be a little rough, a little rocky,
Yeah.
where you say something encouraging to your spouse, they maybe look at you, be like, what you want? Like
Right,
what you want
right.
to get, you know,
Yeah,
what you
yeah,
know, and that may just be a season that y'all have to go through. That doesn't
no,
mean that hey, this doesn't work. It means like, yo, you just got to put in the work because you
you
know
ain't do it,
it
you
was
ain't
it
did it.
was a lot because you didn't do the work in the
Yeah,
past, right?
yeah.
And so that's another thing that I think we
Yeah,
need to keep in
bro,
mind.
I think to that point, it comes back to like Christian disciplines too as well. Like there are things that we do to discipline ourselves to be more faithful to Jesus or
Right.
faithful in our walk with Christ. Where initially it just doesn't feel authentic. It's like this
Mhm.
prayer, I'm just praying. I really don't have words. I really don't feel what I'm praying. But I think a good point of just kind of maybe a good note to have as you're doing that is asking the Lord for your help to make you more genuine. It's like, God, I'm not quite there yet where what I'm saying is all the way true. Like it just is inauthentic. I still feel this way about my spouse, but I need you to change my affections. And my spouse may not believe me right now, but Lord, I want to be so committed to this to where it may seem foreign now. I want to be so committed to where it's going to be foreign me not saying it. So let
Mhm.
me stay faithful in it, even if, and I think that asking the Lord for help in those moments, one, it helps you not be inauthentic, but to be
Right.
real.
Right.
But then it also helps you to be more formed and shaped into the person that you desire to be in the marriage. It's like I want to affirm my wife. I haven't affirmed my wife. Lord, even I repent for the moments that I didn't affirm my wife.
Right.
Lord, help me to affirm my wife more, and in the opportunities that I have. And I think it's fair too to receive that criticism of is this real? I don't feel like what you're saying is real. That's true, baby. Like I haven't been a person to really affirm you. And I know when I say things like this, it doesn't feel like I'm being totally honest, but walk with me. I want to see more of the things that you're doing. With that type of conversation, that type of language changes the dynamic of a marriage in a good
Yeah.
way. Fellas, if you want brownie points, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? And the brownies that get you in, that is the type of conversation and
Yep.
ways that you need to engage that just show that you're really serious about this.
Mhm.
And even if you hadn't been serious about it in the past, I think you taking that attention is going to be good. But I think, like you said, like, don't fake it just to be faking it. And I think it's good to say too, to be honest about, where you are. Like,
Yeah.
baby, like I struggle. And I don't know how far you need to go as far as how honest and transparent you are about your encouraging words, but just being honest about, hey, I'm a work in progress, but I know that there are things that you're doing well. And I just want to call them out and talk about them and affirm you and lift you up. I know this is something that I haven't done, but this is something that you deserve. And as a human, we need. And
Right.
so, let me do more of that. So
Mm.
I think that asking the Lord for help, creating that discipline is never going to be a bad thing, but becoming more genuine in what you're saying, again, it's gonna come by way of help from the Holy Spirit. Like you're not just going to be able to do it because naturally speaking, we're going to be prone to selfishness. We're
Mhm.
going to be prone to only lift up the things that we see and want to share. And many times it's not the things that our spouse are doing. The things that we want to lift up and share are all the things that we're doing. And
Mm.
that's never going to be beneficial in a marriage if the only focus is what you're doing. That's the problem.
Right.
You're only looking at you. And honestly, if we be honest, you're not really showing up in the ways that you think you're showing up, especially if y'all's love languages are different and
Right.
you're giving her your love language. That's not
Mhm.
how she's built. So she might not be a words of affirmation person. She
Right.
may be a quality time person. And just kind of
Right.
like to one of the stories that Gary shares in this chapter, it's like, man, my husband, he doesn't give me time. Like he provides, but he doesn't give me time. And
Right.
her love language was quality time. And
Right.
he's trying to give her words of affirmation. And he's like, I'm killing it.
Right.
You ain't killing it because that's your love language. That's not her love
Right.
language. But
Right.
I'm going too far in, bro. I feel like
No,
it's
man, you good. I mean,
easy
they
to
literally talk
miss
about it
that.
at the end of this chapter, man. But like I said, I think going into this, guys, as you listen to this and as you read the book, you need to understand that there's going to be a season where this is this going to kind of feel forced and maybe feel uncomfortable. But I think that's the season that you have to work through, like you said, until it becomes more natural, until it becomes more of a response to just how you do that than just something you're trying to force, man. So I think that's good.
Hey, you see
Um,
what Pop said, huh?
what do you say right here?
He says, I had very low self-esteem growing up, and the Lord blessed me. God, bless me with a soul. Boy, that right there, boy, that gets you emotional right there. I'm an emotional brother, but I can't even
Yeah,
finish the statement.
yeah,
Bless me with the soulmate who always, all caps, encouraged me to take the next step.
yeah,
My God.
yeah, man.
I wasn't trying to show that one, but he added on to say the key to changing seasons in life is simple through.
Yeah, yeah.
God, come
You
on.
gotta go. You gotta go through it, man.
Yeah.
Man, and so that was just the first part of words of
That is just the
affirmation.
first
The
part.
second part of words of affirmation
Kind
is
words.
kind words.
Yeah.
Kind words, man. Um, and in this one, man, they talk about the difference between your words and your
Mm-hmm.
tone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think this gets men in trouble a lot. I know it gets me in trouble plenty, like to this day. How I
Same.
say something versus what I say makes a big difference. So
Yeah.
if I could say something like, "Well, I wash the dishes," right? Versus, you know what? Yeah, I wash the dishes. It makes a difference. Or,
Yeah.
like we going out to eat tonight, or hey, baby, we going you gonna cook? You gonna go out to eat? Kind of
Yeah.
kind of deal, right? And
Yeah.
so it talks about the importance of this, man. Like I said, man, I think it gets us all in trouble because I think when it comes to words, when it comes to saying things, it's very easy to come off the cuffs, come off your emotions, and not
Yeah.
filter that
Yeah.
through something, not filter that through your tone, gauge, right? And
Yeah.
so part of it says right here, it says that a soft answer turns away anger. I don't think that's scripture. I think there's scripture similar to that.
Yeah.
But I don't think that actual quote is from actual scripture. But you just think about that though. Like if
I
your
think
wife
it's
coming
it's
in,
something like turns away wrath or something like
yeah, or
that.
something like that.
Yeah.
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 So just think when you think about like your tones, right? And your responses to certain things. If your wife come in hot and heavy, mad at you about something that you didn't do or whatever, like you may be justified to snap back, right? To the world
Yeah.
standards.
Yeah.
But if we're trying to honor God in every part of our life and how we speak, how we talk to our wives, right? That's what we do. How is our response going to be, right? How do we say, well, baby, you know, I did do that, or yeah, you're right. I didn't do that,
Yeah.
but whatever. And so, man, let's speak a little bit to the our responses and our tone and
Yeah.
how we talk to our wives, man.
Yeah, bro, it's funny because you always think about the common phrase, it's not what you say, but how you say it. And I've been guilty so many times of, you know, not necessarily saying something bad,
Right,
but the way that I said it, that was very like it wasn't loving. It wasn't soft. It was like, oh, I feel like I have to defend myself now.
right.
I'm like, no, no, okay, let me backtrack. I'm sorry. Let me say this another way, to
Mm,
get my point across because you can't even hear what I'm saying because of how I'm saying it.
yeah,
And I think for guys, it definitely is something that we've got to adjust because sometimes we don't see the issue. It's
right,
like I don't know what you thought. Like I said the right thing, but you didn't say it in the right way. So let's not focus on you saying the right thing. Let's focus on how you're saying it because that is going to change. And I think for me, like I got a little both in me. So sometimes I'll respond the wrong way, but then also sometimes like I want my wife to respond a certain way. And sometimes it's not soft. And because I'm a man, I feel like I got to defend myself. So now I'm in defense mode
right.
instead of really listening to what she's saying. But I think both man and woman have to work on that because I think
Mm,
naturally speaking, it's more going to be a woman thing, to need a soft answer. But men, we need soft answers too
right.
sometimes. Like,
Yeah,
sometimes we get. in our feelings about something
Right.
that was said and the way it was said. And I think that we need to take inventory in that. I was thinking about a thought actually, and I didn't want to go too far ahead. I believe it's in this chapter about kind words, but it talks about keeping records of wrong.
Mhm.
And I think it's hard for us to be kind toward our spouse or say things in a soft way when we feel like we've been wronged by our spouse.
Right, right,
And so
right.
we're unwilling to give our spouse what they need in that moment because they didn't give it to us. And I think if we're going to live into saying kind things or having a soft response or being kind, we've got to let go of all of the records that we've taken in that moment
Mhm.
and ultimately say, "Hey, look, I'm gonna look past that. You are because Christ went first, and I experienced the grace of God, and
Mhm.
He was kind to me.
Mhm.
I can be kind to you and give you what you neither of us deserve this kindness. I think that's the
No.
reality. Sometimes we think we deserve neither of
Right.
us deserve this kindness, but we still experienced it by the grace of God. And I am called as a follower of Jesus to be
Mhm.
kind to you in this moment.
Right.
And so I'm going to give you what I think you don't deserve because you actually deserve it. The reason why, because Christ said you deserve it. I'm
Right.
sorry. I saw Jared said something good.
Yeah, yeah,
What my
man. He
boy
found a
say?
scripture. He found a scripture
Yeah,
because in the book they quoted
that was
somebody
right. Yeah.
who probably tried to quote scripture.
Yep.
Um,
A
but he says,
gentle word, right.
gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word
That's it.
stirs up anger." Right?
That's it.
We're like, how
That's it.
often in
Yeah.
arguments have I stirred up anger because I was like, you know what? I don't even care, bro. Like, I
Yeah.
want to be mad. I want to fight. Let's fight. Let's
Yeah.
go. Right?
Yeah.
And my
Yeah.
response was not right. And
Yeah.
I remember one specific. I'm pretty sure I shared this story before on the podcast, but I remember at one time, man, my wife, we were talking about some stuff, and I got to the point where I made up in my mind. I said, I don't care about
Yeah.
responding in a way that's going to be gentle and loving to her. And so I
Yes.
said what I said, and she snapped, and I was just like, I snapped, and I was like, man. And later on, when we talked about it, she was just like, I'm gonna need your help, right?
Yeah.
She was just like, you are my center when it
Yeah.
comes to arguments, when it comes to frustrations, when it comes to stuff like that. I look to you to be the one to calm the situation down.
Yeah.
And part of me was just like, well, that's not fair, right?
Yeah.
But as the man, as the one called to lead my family and to lead my wife in a way that honors God, that's my responsibility to
Yeah.
take those angry moments in those frustrations where I have the choice, right? I had
Yeah.
plenty of time to decide, and I made the
Yeah.
wrong decision in that one in particular instance.
Yeah.
Where we have that option to say something we know is going to be hurtful, to do something that we know she ain't gonna like. Like if you know your wife don't like it when you stop talking and just walk out the room, you probably shouldn't do that. It's okay for
Probably
you to
shouldn't.
stop talking, right?
Yeah.
It's okay for
Yeah.
you to be like, babe, like I don't know if I need to talk right now, right? I don't know
Yeah.
if I need to say anything right now, right?
Yeah.
Um, but don't throw lighter fluid on the fire, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
expect it not to blow up, right? And
Yeah.
so this whole idea of speaking softly and responding in a way that is loving, man, this is hard, man. And
Yeah.
kind of transitioning which the way you're going, where it talks about not keeping a record of wrong, man, dude. Like I'm like the Lord working on me, right? Because in my
Yeah.
mind, I want to respond and I hold on to stuff, man. My wife, she can get upset, she can get mad, we can fuss, and it's over in her mind. I could be 2 weeks later still mad about something, and she done forgot about it. Right? We didn't argue about like two more things ever since then. I'm still mad about something we argued about 2 months ago,
That's
and she like,
same.
boy, for real, right? And so I have had to learn over these 13 years of marriage with her is that I
Wow.
have to release stuff quickly, right?
Yeah.
I have to
Yeah.
I have to let go of things quickly, and I'm learning from her to respond. To respond well, and then not to hold on to those things.
Yeah.
Right. And it says right here, my wife, this is my wife right here. She says, we have to hold each other accountable so that we can continue to grow and get better. It's not okay for either of
Man.
us to stir up anger. It's just
Preach, Mo.
it's not. Like it's
Yeah.
not worth it, right?
Yeah.
In the moment, you like the satisfaction of being right, or you know what, saying what I'm tired of holding my lip. I'm gonna say what I want to say. I'm
Yeah.
tired of that. You beep, whatever. Right? It's not healthy. It's never worth it. It's never worth it.
Not
Anybody
censoring
who's
yourself.
listening, right?
Yeah.
Anybody who's listening, anybody watch on the replay, tell me about a time where
Yeah.
you responded in anger and it actually helped the situation.
Yeah. Not at all. I don't.
I just don't think this possible,
If
right?
we see comments, we praying for y'all.
Right. Like y'all know something, y'all on a different level or something. Like, come on now. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, man,
Yeah.
I think we keep getting away from this, man. But not keeping a record of wrong. Let's talk
Yeah.
about that, man. Not keeping a record wrong because it's so easy to do. Let's dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've talked to plenty of men that have walked through some hard relational things, whether it be a spouse or just in general, and in relationships with others, whether it be with a female or not, in friendship. And I think what's funny, there are a lot of times where it's the transgressor saying, "I am owed this," and I was like, "Wait a minute, you didn't realize that you were the reason why this issue started." And the grace early on that you were given by your spouse, did you forget? Like for whatever reason, you ain't keeping the record of wrong. Like the
Right.
way that it should look, like we shouldn't be keeping a record of wrong to keep us from being kind, but we may need to keep a record of wrong to know that what we're receiving currently, the kindness that we're receiving from our spouse, is actual kindness that we don't deserve.
Right. Keep
Um,
records of your wrongs.
yeah. So what's funny, Jared, he commented and gave the passage. Shout out to Jared Quinn, him and my boy Chris with Squared Up Barbershop. They started a podcast called The Weld Podcast. Everybody, if you're watching, go check out The Well. The first episode, they share their stories. And it's dope to kind of hear Jared share his testimony because I've known him for a long time. But he was talking about his wife, and he was like, man, like kind of similar to your dad, like the Lord blessed me with a wife. And he talked about how his wife loves the Lord and how ultimately was the reason why, like, ultimately, like he's got fire for the Lord now. And early on in their marriage, he was like, I just wasn't the best husband, wasn't the best father, you know. And I think it's that idea of like, man, like the person that needs to be keeping record, it needs to be the person who has not been wrong but is in the wrong in that moment, right?
Right. Right.
Like
Right.
who refuses to be kind toward their spouse. You need to think about all the things that your spouse has been gracious and kind regarding you, or
Mm-hmm.
or, or maybe you can't even think of that. Maybe you're like, that doesn't even exist. Well, on a spiritual level, you need to realize the ways that God has been kind towards you, and that ultimately leads you toward being kind toward others, because He doesn't keep the record.
Mm-hmm.
He says, "Hey, I have covered you by the blood of Jesus and the work of Christ. Therefore, I'm looking over your wrongs and seeing His righteousness, that imputed righteousness, that alien righteousness that believers receive through Christ." You need to look at that. We are covered. And in marriage, sometimes we need that covering where it's
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, we're going to move forward because I'm not keeping record.
Right.
I'm still going to be kind to you. I'm still going to pursue you. I'm still going to be committed to you because Christ was committed to us.
Right.
And marriage reflects the relationship between Christ and his church. And so
Mm-hmm.
we're going to always come back to that. And it's not an unfortunate thing, it's actually a good thing for you. But you need to realize your sin. I mean, it's that the gospel aspect. We cannot be saved and forgiven if we do not see that we are a sinner in need of grace. You will not be kind towards your spouse if you don't realize that you haven't been kind. You haven't done the things. You are a sinner. And once you start realizing that more, the more you become aware of the ways in which you've received something that you don't deserve,
Right.
the more you're going to be willing to pursue this spouse in ways that you feel like, man, do they deserve it?
Mm-hmm.
They do. They do. It's always yes.
Right.
Um, but yeah.
Right, man. Yeah, it's that, like you said, the whole idea of, man, well, I have received it. Why not give this out? And I don't care how angry or how mad we get, man. Like, as men who are seeking to honor God in every part of our lives, our responsibility is to release those things, right? Like, yes, she didn't do that. Yes, she did that. Yes, she didn't do this. Yes, she did that.
Yeah.
Like, but are you gonna spend your time
Sheesh.
whining and complaining about all the stuff she did or didn't do? Or are you going to start making moves to make the relationship or the marriage better?
Yeah.
Like, it's a decision you're just going to have to make, man. And prayerfully, that this is a two-way street where y'all are both working on that. But if it's not that at the moment, it's your responsibility as the man, as the leader, to
Yeah.
start it, right?
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
start showing that example, right? To start being the one to show them, like, hey, yeah, you did me wrong, but I'm gonna forgive you. I'm gonna let go of this, right? And it's not that you even saying that, right? It's not that you saying, you know what, girl, you said you did wrong, but I forgive you. I'm gonna let it go because you messed up. You
Yeah.
messed up, but I'm gonna let it go. Cause it's like, nah, you just being petty at this moment now. But when you
Yeah.
continually treat her, love her in the same way after you let go of that stuff, man, it makes a big difference, man. Because it can be hard to, man. I just, like I said, man, it take me a long time to get over stuff, man.
I'm the same way,
It
bro.
really do.
Yeah.
Like it take a minute for me to get upset. But when I get upset, I'm there
You
for,
there?
I'm
Yeah.
there for a minute, right? It take a lot, but
Yeah.
when I get there, I'm there. And so that, that's just big, man. And one thing he talks about at the end, man, it's probably the last part we're gonna talk about for today's episode. We'll dive in next time in the second half of this chapter because it's so good.
Yeah.
Um, but the last two things he talks about choosing forgiveness, making
Mm.
that decision in your mind that you're going to forgive them even if they don't say they're sorry. And
Yeah.
then not allowing bitterness to control the relationship, right? Bitterness has to go, right?
Yeah.
We can say that we forgive, but still hold on to the anger and the bitterness of, I can't believe you did that. I can't never trust you. I can't, I can't believe you. Why you sitting over there like you just like you okay, like you okay with the mistake? But I said I'm sorry. Or just sitting over there just looking just ugly, just
Yeah.
whatever, however you feel about it, man. But that bitterness, man, choosing to forgive, letting go of that bitterness, man, is an important thing. You want to speak to that, man, as we get ready to close?
Yeah. I just think bitterness is a poison
Mhm.
that'll never give life to a marriage, let alone a relationship. And so, in seeing that, it's like, oh no, we got to kill this. We need an
Right,
antidote to this bitterness.
right.
And I think that the antidote to bitterness is the opposite of keeping record of wrong. It's
Hmm.
keeping a record of right. And I know we talked about not going, but I think he kind of alludes to this about a story, and his advice to this couple was, hey, I want you to write all the things that you can affirm, keep in a notebook, and writing all the things there. And I think when we begin to look at that list, you become a little less bitter and a little more
Hmm.
thankful, and you start that list started to grow. And in those bitter moments, being able to go back to it and see like the blessing and the things that you see in the spouse, that you can affirm and speak to, it's the antidote to the bitterness.
Yeah,
So instead of keeping record of wrong, like, let's keep a record of rights, and let's go back to those things and help kill the bitterness that we have, because a lot of times it's unwarranted.
right.
Uh, when we give life to it, that makes it problem. Like, I think, not to say that you need to look around some of the issues and things, but I just never see bitterness play out well for a marriage.
Right.
It's always going to lead to separation. And so, just thinking about that, man, I think that's a thought that I think would, like, a helpful practical thing in
Hmm.
dealing with bitterness is not keeping record of wrong, because that's just going to make you more bitter.
Right.
And if you like me, like, I'm the same way. Like, I can hold a grudge for a really long time. My wife, she a quick forgiver. Let's go watch a movie. I'm like, I don't want to be around you right now. And then what I begin to do is the little things that she does wrong, like, I begin adding them to the list. and saying,
Mm.
see, that's why I'm mad at you. And
Right.
then like it never breeds true intimacy
Nope.
and nearness and closeness. It
Nope.
always ends up being something that leads us further away. And so don't give room for bitterness. Don't get the moment that you see it, begin to attack that thing. And you've got to attack it. I mean, scripture, it calls us not to be passive in our walk to sanctification.
Right.
We've got to be active. We've got to stir one another to good works. We've got to pursue the Lord, to pursue these Christian disciplines, to want to see us grow in our relationship with the Lord. Like we've got to do that if we're gonna make it to the end. And so you've got to stir that, fan that flame, if you will, in your marriage of not allowing bitterness to creep in, but to
Right.
attack it with the goodness that you see.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, those are my thoughts there, man. But I
Yeah,
think it's
man.
all good. It's
Yeah.
all good.
And as we close, man, I want to say something, man. My pastor says, he says that forgiveness, and I would add bitterness as well. Forgiveness is like drinking poison and hoping that the other person gets hurt.
Man.
Like it only hurts you, man. The
Yeah.
bitterness and the anger, it only poisons you, makes you rotten, makes you spoiled, um makes you the one that is damaged, and then your hurt and your brokenness in drinking that poison poisons the whole marriage, right?
Yeah.
The structure that God has set up, right? It messes all that up, man. And so dude, man, that's good right there, man.
Man, man.
So
You
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 go ahead.
saying you
Go ahead.
saying a lot, and I'll just make this one last comment. As we think about forgiveness, how can we be forgiven if we have yet to forgive others? And so that is like so important in our relationship with the Lord, where we feel like in those moments our unforgiveness is warranted, yet we cannot be forgiven by God if we don't. And so, Lord, help us,
Yeah,
because it's like, man, we really just don't be seeing it at times. And I think it's the trick of the enemy,
right.
to allow us to be blinded in those
Mhm.
ways, and not see the forgiveness that's been given to us, that we have access to. I just think, man, it's a lot there, for couples. But our prayer for you, as you're watching this, is that you pursue forgiveness, that you pursue speaking life into your marriage, that you affirm your spouse, that you do the work that it
Right,
takes to affirm your spouse. That means you got to begin to see and look, be intentional about the things that your spouse is doing, or the potential there.
right,
Sometimes, again, men, you are not speaking to the finished version. You are speaking to a version that is in process. And we have to speak to the future of what we see. That's a part of leadership. Hey, we might not be there, but I see a vision. I see a person that is there, and that's the person that I'm going to speak to and speak life into. I'm not going to speak into the things that I don't see. I'm going to speak it. And I think that when you start doing that, you start getting weapons and tools
right.
that are gonna be so vital to you guys flourishing and thriving in marriage. The enemy don't want you to have them
Oh,
tools,
no.
uh, but pursue them, because I think it's gonna mean a lot. Like 38 years for your parents.
Right,
The reasoning is because they've equipped themselves.
right.
13 years for you, or 12 years, 13 years for you,
13.
because you equipped yourself. 9 years for me. Obviously, it's not perfect, but
Mhm.
we are working and willing to do the work. And what we're saying to you today who are watching, you got to do the work. It doesn't happen
Yeah,
apart from it. And the help that you need is through the Spirit.
right. And I think this one last thing. I know we keep saying this one last thing.
We passed this. It's time to be on
One
the
more
third
thing,
close.
brother. I think too, man. I think another thing that's important is if you're a man and you're watching this, and you're going to, if you're a woman watching this, and you're trying to take these concepts and you're trying to apply them to your marriage, with your spouse isn't isn't for it, right? Like I say, still do your part in
Yeah.
our prayer, and that your prayer should be that your spouse can see the importance of uh these principles. And
Yeah.
so and like I said, if it's not working, if you feel like it's not working, you've been trying, man, I say keep going, right?
Yeah.
Of course, there's situations where professional help may need to be brought into that relationship. But for those of you who are just maybe not there yet, and you feel like, hey, the spouse is just kind of like, I don't really know if I want to try this stuff. It's kind of weird, man. Just keep pursuing it. Right. You keep doing what you are going to do, because here's the thing, man. I think a lot of times, I think we may have said this earlier, we try to control somebody else, right? We try to
Yeah.
control our spouse. We try to control somebody to do something we want them to do. And at the end of the day, like, man, we just got to take it to God. You're like, hey, God, help their minds to see, help their hearts to feel the fact that, hey, these are things that need to be applied to our marriage in order for us to get better at it, man. So that's cool,
Yeah.
man.
That's
Yeah.
good, bro.
But yeah, man. All right. So we again, thank you for tuning into this live episode of the Men to Men podcast. Like I said, we'll be back next time in a couple weeks for part 2 of part 1, I guess.
Yeah.
As we dive into the importance of words of affirmation. Thank y'all again for watching. Thank all of you who left comments while we were going live. If you're watching
Yeah.
this on the replay, man, let's hear your thoughts.
Yeah.
Comment down below. Let us know different things maybe you agree with, you disagree with, maybe some encouragement that you can leave for somebody else who may be watching this in the future. Other than that, man, y'all be blessed, y'all be good, and continue to honor God in every single part of your life. Peace.